Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about Masters of the Air, and we will be discussing episodes 3 and 4. We apologize for the delay, but sometimes wars have to wait for true detectiving. So we're back now. We are very quickly going to go through these episodes. Tom, I felt like when I first watched the show, there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to clarify and clean up. Now I just feel like I'm enjoying the show and all of the absolute madness that was going on during World War II over the continents as these guys went and dropped bombs. The one thing I will say about this show from the top is, do you find it confusing trying to remember who is who?
Yes, I think very much so. I think even my wife kind of called out like a lot of these guys look very similar and like they're all wearing that same kind of big puffy jacket and everything. It's very difficult to kind of tell who's who. And I think even in episode 4 as they're bringing in like new guys and new crew, which makes sense. Like that's that kind of how this thing goes where they're rotating in guys constantly. It is a bit more challenging to follow them all.
What I thought was funny is there's I would argue Biddick is probably maybe the more unique looking character, and they were like, guess what? Not going to be with us very long. So everyone's going to look the same. Also, if anyone has a mustache, they're all going to look pencil thin and similar to the other guys. So
Yeah.
good luck.
I feel
I'm
like the only guy they gave a different jacket to is Bucky, right? Or not Bucky, but Buck.
Egan.
Like they give him that more, I don't know, like lighter colored jacket, which is pretty cool. I don't know how
Yeah,
he got the special one.
which apparently is historically accurate. He had
Mm.
a lighter, sheepskin
Mm-hmm.
jacket. So it does help for, although, I mean, there are two main characters, and you can tell the difference between Austin Butler
Mm-hmm.
and Egan. So I don't need help there, show. I need help with everyone else. Like maybe just plaster a name tape across their forehead, because also they're constantly wearing oxygen masks, and you're like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
who is that? Who just died? Who's still with us? Anyways, let's dive into episode 3. We're not going to go scene by scene, but this is the one where uh, I just love this. They're super pumped. They're like, listen, we're going to put as many planes in the air as possible. This is going to be the largest air armada. And some general was like, guess what, guys? We're going to put them all in the air. And then that guy's lackey was like, sir, great idea. Let's put them all in the air. And then that slowly came down to the pilots, and the pilots are like, wait, what are we doing? This sounds like a crazy plan. And sure enough, it is. So they are doing this combination. And I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce any of these towns right, but it's Regensburg and Schweinhoven something. I don't know. The funniest thing I thought here is the S2, the guy that gives the weather report, Tom. His nickname is Stormy. I found that very funny. He's
Yes.
like, listen, there's going to be clouds. And then when he's done, the CO's like, thanks, Stormy. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I wonder if every S2, every intel officer was named Stormy, or if that guy just had the nickname. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
That's also what's fun about, well, I guess they don't really do it in this show, but mainly pilots have call signs.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess none of the other ones do. They've got nicknames, but not really call signs other than
Well, it's funny
Stormy.
though because this S2 intel officer, his name is actually Steve Thunder, but they call him Stormy for some reason.
I hate you. I hate you. I can't believe I laughed so hard at that joke. Oh, Tom, brilliant. Brilliant,
So
brilliant,
this
brilliant.
this seemed like a good idea, right? Like if you were flying, wouldn't you want to be a part of like this large armada, if nothing else, just for the sake of a numbers game? If you have this many aircraft in the air, you're less likely to get shot down by enemy aircraft. I mean, obviously that doesn't end up happening here. They kind of get, shafted and have to do this whole mission themselves. But
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I guess I would argue, by the time the first element's across, if you're in that back element, those fighter planes and the anti-aircraft are all waiting for you, which might make it terrible. And also, it doesn't seem like these guys know where anyone else is in the formation other than by sight. And these
yeah,
pilots can't see below or really above them. So I don't know. It seems like a really good way of planes to crash into each other, but um, anyways, great moment here where they have like the paths of all of the flights, and one is going all the way down to South Africa, and Biddick like interrupts the briefing, and he's like, "Hey, sir, why does that line go all the way to South Africa?" And everyone like laughs at them, but Biddick is right on. Biddick like, why? Why are we flying to South Africa? And their ultimate point is like, hey, we're trying to vary our routes. If they see us coming in, they're going to be waiting for us when we come out. So we're going to surprise them by sending you all. And I was like, okay, makes sense. And they make a big point. What I didn't like about this, and I don't know if this is historically accurate. I tried to go back to the book to find this raid, but like they're all about, hey, this is going to be a coordinated effort between 3 groups. And then it's like, oh, those 2 other groups aren't showing up. Let's go anyways. I was like, it's weird for the show to like emphasize that, but then be like, we're going anyways. And once again, I don't know if this is true to life, but I found it incredibly frustrating.
Well, and yeah, like that guy making the decision to send them on like seemingly a suicide mission, but they were able to still accomplish it, which is certainly a feat that was supposed to be with 3 big crews, and only this one ended up doing it. So they proved it was possible because they successfully dropped their bombs on this ball bearing plant.
Yes. Yeah. Oh no. I've got a story to tell. I don't know if this is going to make much sense, but in my job, I talked to someone in the ball bearing industry after watching this episode, and I brought up this show. And I was like, oh, you guys are popular because ball bearings were in this show, Masters of the Air. And the guy was like, oh, I have not seen that show. And I said, well, in one of the missions...
I've got a podcast.
I did not say that. In one of the missions, they fly over to bomb a ball bearing. And the guy goes, oh, yeah, that was my company. They were...
Goodness.
So he's currently with this company that obviously is a German company. I mean, I don't know. It's like BMW or any of these other German companies that have some, maybe a little bit of a tainted past. But
yeah.
Anyways, I thought that was...
Monopoly, I guess. The big ball bearing lobby.
Yes, exactly. What I thought was silly is they have this like reserve command pilot, and this is just Egan doesn't want them to go on this big mission without him. So I don't know. There's all sorts of things happening in this, which I don't know if the show is just trying to like overemphasize things, or like Egan can't let these guys go into danger without him. There's a moment where Egan takes over a gun on the plane, and I was like, I don't think so. I don't think the higher up is like kicking a gunner off of his gun just so he can shoot at Germans. I don't know. I found this all silly.
It's a bit showy, right?
Yes, very showy. But maybe it's true to life once again. The thing that kind of gripped me the most as you watch this is these pilots having to make the decision to bail or not. And like, it's literally the decision of, okay, do we see if we can limp this plane along and like fall out of formation or blow up in the sky, or do I pull the little red light and everyone gets out and we all, end up in occupied, where the Germans are. I thought that was, I don't know that that's something I'd given a lot of thought to until watching this show.
Well, and I like how they I think at this first episode, or in episode 3 here, then more so in episode 4, where they follow that through line. And it's not just guys jumping out of planes and then, okay, they're gone, they're not in the series anymore. Showing us what actually happens on the ground to these characters was beyond fascinating to me, to see how they they have these choices to make, to get smuggled out or to surrender and be a prisoner of war.
Right. And this is where we've seen Quinn, who is actually, helpfully, a very distinct looking character. And he's also not a pilot, so we know when we're dealing with Quinn. But he jumps out. Terrible scene watching. I mean, could they have named this kid a worse nickname? Babyface? You're just like, oh, great, we're going to watch Babyface die as the ball turret gunner because they can't get the hatch open. That was brutal. Yeah. But Quinn jumps and leaves him, which no one can blame him. Just terrible. Clevens loses a guy on his plane, and then were you surprised that Biddick went? this early in the series because that
Yeah.
actor is a pretty big name nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. I would like when his went down. I'm like, oh, okay, he's gonna go down, and then we're gonna follow his story. But no, like that plane went down a little bit too hard. He's gone. That's a bummer.
I did feel they've done this twice with Biddick's plane. One when he was flying into those cliffs, he's like lower than the cliffs with no power, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna crash on those cliffs. Nope, lands in a field. In this scene, it looked like he was gonna clear the trees, and then they cut back and he's in the trees, and I was like, oh, okay, show you are
Yeah,
playing tricks with us with Biddick, but
yeah. Well,
unfortunately he.
it will get to it. It will get to it in the end, right? But they also, I mean, a show like this that obviously it's a war and there's a lot of characters kind of coming in and out. To get to have like a big character or a big named actor leave makes sense, but we also get what the other big guy that we get Austin Butler's character potentially going down too, right? Do you think that's true? Do you think they would get rid of that actor, or do you think he's just kind of MIA and we're going to come back to him? I know I'm jumping ahead here a bit.
Yeah, and that's in episode 4. So I've read the book, Tom. So I don't want to reveal anything because I know what happens to all of them. So
Okay.
let's just say let's just say Clevens is the father of paragliding, Tom. So you're gonna see some real fancy paragliding out of that B-17. Anyways, that's not true. He's dead. Okay. Here's what I did not like. There is so obviously they're showing us this group just being absolutely demolished because the other two groups didn't show up. The plan's not going, and these guys have to fly all the way to North Africa, which seems like a really long flight. I don't think they're going to be able to nap or be served a meal.
Yeah, no cocktail service.
They do like a very cinematic, like slow-mo, like they almost are like, hey, this is how beautiful battle is. And it was like, I was like, I didn't know what the show was trying to do. Like, it is brutal. People are dying. And then during this, like, and even the score is kind of like soaring. And I was like, I don't know what the show is trying. I feel like the tone was off from what the show was trying to do to what was happening to the characters. And then we have this slow motion, like dude's body fly through the air and go through the propeller. And I'm sure that happened in real life. But the way this is shot was, I don't know. I watched this and I was like, what are we doing here? And I don't want this to be just a nitpick of the show. I'm enjoying the show. And they have a challenge to make like air battle look real. But I don't know. This scene took me out of it in a way that I felt like it was like a show choice that didn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like they tried to make it a little bit too poetic in what was kind of happening. We realized it was a very long trek, so they had to kind of show how they kind of persevered and how he said like, hey, we're going to stay in this plane. We're like, as long as this thing can stay in the air, we're going to keep going to North Africa. But I'm with you. I think that like it, not glorify, that's not the right word, but the way it positioned it and showed that one guy like getting hit by the wing, I thought was too much. Took me out of it a bit.
It's like the show is like, hey, we're going to show you a beautiful aerial ballet. Like appreciate it with the music. And it was like, no. You, from a show perspective, have showed us how brutal this is and how quickly it all goes bad. Like, don't give us the soaring music and the slow-mo and the like comical CGI body. Like the violence of that, once again, I understand that maybe it happened in real life, but the violence was almost comical in that moment, which I don't feel like the show, I don't know. I felt like this scene was mismanaged, which I'm not a showrunner, but...
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Anyways, to your point, Clevens is like, we're going to sit here and take it. We're not going to bail. His co-pilot is constantly like, I mean, these guys clear the runway, and his co-pilot's like, hey, should we bail? And Clevens is like, no. And you made the point. So based on what you just said, you just think Clevens really wants to visit Africa. He's like, listen, it's my dream since I was a boy. I always wanted to see Africa. And then he does the elephant impression. He's like, "Mrrr." And they're like, sir, we're flying through flak. Can you not do that? He's just motivated to see Africa. That's why he doesn't want to bail out.
It was pretty underwhelming. I thought they were going to get to Africa. There's going to be like a base, or there's going to be somewhere for them to go. But no, it's like just in the middle of the desert.
Classic military operation. There are not cold beers here. I love that Egan is like, something like, I hope they're bringing those cold beer. And he was like, yeah, they won't. There won't be cold beer. I thought that was great.
I like when we get the sequence too at the end where he has like the classic movie thing where he's like, don't put down the landing gear. Like, wait. And then he puts it down, and yeah,
that felt very much a show like, hey, we need to kind of spruce this up again. And once again, some of this stuff I would blame on, like, they chose a book that is so sweeping in scope that they're like, I don't know, these shows have got to be about the people, and I don't
agreed.
know that this book is like, it's got a lot of stories in it, it talks about, but it covers such a large swath that it's difficult to kind of piecemeal this together. But once again, I'm still enjoying the show. I feel like this is like Ted Lasso season 3. I'm still enjoying it. I'm sorry that the therapist got hit on her bike by a car. I'm sorry. Like, anyways.
It's just, it's different than Band of Brothers. Like, that's what we were kind of hoping for, is getting that, following Easy Company, following a specific set of guys kind of all the way through. And really, we're only getting kind of 2 from their perspective, and all the other characters I think are more of a blur for me. It's tougher to follow their stories and get as invested, but still like beautifully shot. Like, again, I feel like most of the aerial stuff was really good CGI. I felt like the CGI when they land in Africa is very poor. Like, the background looks incredibly green screeny to me. But again, I know I'm nitpicking, but I also do want to say
they also use it in the intro. So you're like, yeah, we've seen that shot like 30 times, and it doesn't look better in the episode. Like, I don't know.
But this was another one that had one of those super quick cut endings. Like, they kind of land and they kind of talk, and then it just boom, it fades to black. Like, they need to do a better job of finding some kind of conversation between 2 characters to fade us to black,
or roll the music and credits before you. It's so there's not even a beat before it goes from episode cutting to like the next on, and very strange. The only other things I wanted to mention before we get out of episode 3 is just like the idea of counting shoots as a plane is going down and logging where that plane goes down. And like the I think it's Crosby in this scene is like trying to remember, or maybe I'm getting my episodes mixed up of where planes go down. And then the other is being 350 miles from land and ditching your B-17 in the water. That seems like the worst. Apparently going from like England to France or Normandy, like the channel, which I might be wrong, but I think is only like 30 miles wide. There was a really good like the Brits had it down to when a plane went down, they would have a boat like going to get those pilots. So you were like in really good shape. I feel like 350 miles off the coast of North Africa, that group of dudes may not be rescued as quickly. So as someone who is terrified of drowning and sharks and taxes, it feels like a terrible, terrible way to go.
Yeah.
But let's roll into episode 4. Episode 4, they have gone native. They're all like, Egan's got a fez, I think is what those hats are called. He's got the funny little hat, which apparently he actually had. I've seen a historical picture of him in that hat with his major's rank pinned to it. And so they are, I couldn't tell whether or not trucks were showing up to pick them up or whether or not those were planes and the dust landing. But somehow they're getting back from Algeria to England. We have this interesting moment with Quinn in Belgium, and he runs into his buddy Bailey. Once again, Quinn and Bailey, very distinct looking. I know exactly who those characters are when I see them. They are trying to escape back to England. I found all this very fascinating, that like the Dutch resistance asking them questions and making them write this down. Tom, do you feel like you would have been shot as an infiltrator, or would have you been able to tell them who Babe Ruth did and did not play for?
Yeah, those are good questions. I thought about coming up with a list of America questions for you to ask, but instead of that, I'm just going to ask you to please sing the national anthem.
I shall not. I shall not. I would do a Kermit the Frog impression singing the national anthem, but I wouldn't want everyone to laugh so hard they fall off their dinosaur. So, I don't know.
Did we ever get why, like, or how these Dutch guys figured out that Bob here was an infiltrator? Again, I love the way they did it because both Bailey and Quinn were very fooled. They thought Bob was just, a part of one of these other groups. But did they say what he said in that interview to trip him?
No, I don't think we got that in this. And I watched it twice and I didn't pick up on it. I'm assuming, like the way people write their dates, the baseball knowledge, somewhere in there they found out that this guy was, and I don't think they made a mistake. I think the show is trying to show us how ruthless they had to be, because if their ring of conspirators was found out, they'd all be executed. So, we went from one show where someone got shot in the face to another show where someone got shot in the face. And it's been just brutal face shooting all across. This was I don't know. The way they did this was pretty sudden, pretty brutal. But I feel like they're doing a really good depiction of, like, hey, this is what airmen on the ground had to go through and what they were dealing with.
Yeah, it was very fascinating. Like, just to know, like, my assumption was like, okay, yeah, they fall to the ground in enemy territory, and then they're just kind of goners. But like, knowing that they have the ability to surrender and become a prisoner of war. And like the guy even tells them, like, hey, you'll probably survive, but you'll be a prisoner of war for who knows how long. Or you can try to get like smuggled out, and all the lengths that these people are going to help these down soldiers is incredible.
Right. Yeah. All because they want to get them back into the air so they can bomb more Nazis. Tom, your issue, if you parachuted into an occupied land, is you're too handsome. They would you wouldn't be able to like slip in and out as a normal person. Everyone would stop you and be like, are you that famous model actor? And so you would almost be caught immediately and shot. So I'm sorry to say.
But I also have that tattoo on my forehead that says USA. So
that's true. That's a good point. You'd have to come up with a clever cover story for that. All right, we're back in England, and Captain Dye has finished his 25 missions, which means him and his crew gets to rotate back. This is where the show is trying to tell us how just terrible this is and how unlikely it is that someone finishes 25 missions. We went over the number last podcast in terms of what these guys' survival rates was, but the show does a good job of being like, there's 12 crews left of the original 35. And with that, we enter, which Band of Brothers did as well. And I thought they did. Like, there's an episode called Replacements, which is about the guys that are showing up after they've taken losses to like fill in. And this is quite possibly one of the worst positions people can be in, is because you're showing up to like join these battle hardened dudes that have seen the elephant, and now you have to do your job. And this Rosenthal, this group of guys meeting Egan and Clevens, like, you kind of think Egan and Clevens are almost going to haze them a little bit, but instead these guys are just like, they kind of like, I don't know, show that they flew around naked in Texas. I thought this was pretty funny, where he immediately is like, oh, you've heard of us? We fly around naked? Like, I don't know. I thought this was an interesting dynamic and went in a different way than I expected.
Yeah, because the assumption would be like that's how you heard about us, because we were the guys that fly around naked because it was so hot in our plane or whatever. But it's like the opposite. It's like, no, we heard that you guys were good pilots and you're going to be good in the air. So like they're just trying to give them kind of compliments.
Right. And then they walk away and he's like, I can't believe I brought up flying around in our skivvies. But we get a little romance here, Tom. We get a little romance of Harry Nash, who once again looks like all the other actors with the pencil-thin mustache. He approaches Helen, one of the, I believe they're the term
Like
is
American Cross or Red Cross.
I don't know if they're Red Cross or WAC or WAVE. I don't know what the abbreviation is, but it's like Women's Air Corps or anyways. I'll look it up. I'm sure I am wrong in all of the acronyms I just used, but they dance. Very sweet moment.
Yeah, and like again, this was that kind of thing where even when they get together later and he asks like for a donut or coffee before he's gonna like take off, they have a little moment. Like I couldn't remember it was these two characters. Like they just blended into me.
Oh, you did. And what's weird is there's only like 3 female characters. There's the woman that works at the pub. There's Helen, and then Helen's friend. And so, I don't know what it is about this show that makes characters difficult to. And I think I only picked this up on the second watch, and in the first watch I was just as confused. The conversation I also wanted to note was, Rosenthal going back, trying to save a little face. And he's just like, hey, to Clevens and Egan, like, any advice for the new guys? Mm-hmm. And this is where I came to the conclusion that I don't find Egan charming. I find Egan kind of a jerk. Like, he says these things and it's like, I think it's supposed to be like cavalier and charming, but in the end, it's just kind of brutal. And I don't know that I understand the relationship with Cleven and Egan, because Cleven is clearly the more like the nicer, and Egan, because Egan's like, oh, make it to 11 missions, because then you beat the odds, you're not dead. And it's just like, I don't know. Maybe it's the cold calculation of guys just not making it. Maybe it's a little bit of callousness, but I don't know. I find Egan less charming the more I spend time with Egan.
Well, yeah, Egan doesn't dance with dogs. I mean, some of the dance with dogs,
Good point.
Key to my heart.
Good point. That's a great point. All right. Colonel Harding, once again, pencil thin mustache, dark haired dude, pants him in a uniform, he gathers all the officers around and he's like, so in the book, Tom, they talk a lot about like the mental status of these flyers and like what they went through, like how mentally challenging it was for them, how like a buddy, going on the same mission and then you get back and that buddy just doesn't exist anymore. They used to have retreats for these pilots to go on to like, once again, like calm themselves and get back into the mental shape to do their job. I feel like the show condensed that all into this conversation. And it's this colonel being like, hey, the doctor thinks you guys are all sissies and that you're flak happy, but that's not us, right? And we should load a B-17 up and go bomb Hitler. Like, I don't know. Once again, I feel like the show taking on a larger issue is really like condensing it down to this conversation, and I don't know.
Well, and Egan like pushes back at him, right? Like he kind of is a little bit insubordinate, or like even like hits him, slaps him at one point, but he kind of like laughs it off as not a big deal. But they're kind of pushing each other.
Yeah, it's super awkward because Egan's like, because after Colonel Harding's like, let's go bomb Hitler, Egan's like, you're flak happy, and he kind of hits him on the shoulder, and everyone is like just watching, and I think Egan eventually adds a sir in there. But honestly, Egan was not in the wrong. This guy's probably a little bit drunk and he's talking nonsense. And he's not the one flying the missions, which I find a little bit interesting because I do feel like in the Army Air Corps, even someone like Colonel Harding would have gone on. He would have been a pilot and he would have gone on some of these missions. And the show has not shown him go on any of them. So, and there's always going to be contention between the guys putting themselves in harm's way and the dude that writes it up on a chalkboard,
right,
and sends them out. But
especially after that, big armada that was supposed to happen, like he was the one that made the decision to send this small crew on this mega mission.
Sure. It all is well because Clevin dances with that husky Meatball, which is just a lovely moment, and I wondered how much dog hair got on his uniform. We're back in with Quinn and Bailey. They're being led around by a teenager. There's this moment where we find out that Quinn has apparently kept some love letters from the girl that he ran into when he first parachuted into town. And you can't keep love letters, Tom, because then the Nazis will go and kill that person and their family. That's a Valentine's Day rule.
Is that just because we're recording on Valentine's Day, or that's what it's called?
It's a Valentine's Day rule. That's what it means. This episode, most of the other episodes, like there was the air combat. It was kind of like lead up, air combat, end of episode. This one was different in the sense that there's no air combat. It's a lot of like them celebrating the 25 missions and then Egan going on like leave a day pass or 2-day pass to London, where the show is giving us some context of like what was happening in London, people from different cultures, all like that tried to escape the Nazis. So we have a Polish woman whose husband was shot down, and I don't know, she makes light that he turned into potatoes, which was then turned into vodka. I don't know if that's a funny joke or a terrible joke. But Egan is enjoying himself in London, and it just seems like all these people are super sad while the world is in chaos, and they're trying to find a little bit of comfort from each other as the bombs go off outside their hotel window. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that is just... I can't fathom like that happening where he's just cool, calm, and collected, looking at his balcony and seeing all this flak and like gunfire and like just fireworks happening out there. Like it's crazy. It's dumbfounding.
It is strange to think about, but I feel like Egan's the right guy to kind of handle it well, and so he. I don't know that I got the Polish woman's name, but they seem to be enjoying each other's company. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
And they have a lovely view of the fireworks. Cut from there, the other romantic story is Harry and Helen. Harry, very poorly, is like, you might be the last pretty face I ever see. Well, guess what, Harry? Things don't go well for you on this mission. And this mission is a repeat of them bombing the U-boat pens at Bremen. And so this fixing the plane while taxiing seemed unnecessary. Yes?
Yes. I was just about to say, I feel like they tried to dramatize these mechanics and the incredible work that they do to fix these planes. But yeah, none of this really needed to happen. It was so silly. It's like, oh, we got 1 plane or 2 planes in front of us, 1 plane in front of us, and he like dramatically gets off. It was a bit much.
Can you imagine being on the runway of an air? And I get the stakes are maybe a little bit higher, and these guys don't want to miss out on this mission. Certainly, since Clevin's the one leading it. But can you imagine being on the runway and the pilot being like, okay, we're going to slowly taxi because the mechanic's still in the engine. He's trying to fix the overdrive. Which, Tom, this was a moment I recently flew on an airplane and realized we'd been sitting on the taxiway for a really long time. The pilot came over the radio and he goes, listen, folks, we're a little bit delayed. They tried to put a bunch of more fuel in us because it's cheaper down here than where we're going. However, now we're too heavy and we've got to burn some off. So it's going to be about 20 minutes. So jeez. I was like, what? And the pilot seems so disgruntled. So absolutely disgruntled. He's like, I don't know why they gave us all this cheap fuel. We're going to sit on this taxiway. And then that guy must have gone, I don't know, Mach 7 because we didn't land more than 10 minutes late. But Anyways, I thought of our mechanic fixing airplanes on the taxiway while I was sitting there waiting to make my flight. But
Did the door stay on?
yes, the door did stay on. No issues there. We made it all safely with all the doors intact. All right. We have the train station scene, which, of all the characters in the show, I think Quinn is the one I relate to the most. Being in a foreign country, not speaking the language, being surrounded by Nazis, I would be the first that's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to run. I'm going to run and run and run. And nobody's going to stop me. I'm going to Forrest Gump my way right on out of here. But we find out, so they are being escorted by... Manon is one of the women and then I don't remember the other character's name. I don't know that we got the other character's name, but their guides are two females that speak French and are going to escort them to Spain and then to England. But I very much related with Quinn when he panicked and tried to run when the train guy was like, ticket, papers.
Yeah, that was a bold play. I don't know if I mean, I get that he is a fish out of water here and surrounded by Nazis, but running doesn't seem like... I feel like you're kind of pot committed at this point. You shouldn't be running away from Nazis. You should be listening to these incredible women that are, handling these guys and trying to get them to safety.
Oh, I agree. I thought you were going to go a different direction. I thought you were like, surrounded by Nazis, you should listen to the Nazis. I thought you were going to go in a different direction, but you went in the right direction. Me, on the other hand,
USA. Sorry.
As a coward, I would be like, this guy's an American. I'd point at Bailey. I'd be like, this guy's an American. Arrest him. And then they'd be like, why are you speaking English? And I'd be like, s'il vous plaît, bonjour.
Je ne sais quoi?
Yeah. What does Bluey's dad say in the Pav? What does he say? Pavla? Anyways, I can't remember.
That's good.
This is not
Watch Bluey. Bluey's great.
This is not the Bluey podcast that we want to make. All right, the return mission from Bremen. They lost 8 planes, and we find out who went down, Tom.
Yeah, he went down swinging. So apparently lost most of their starting lineup. I like how they do the, hey, they're just talking baseball kind of thing when he has to call from one of the
Egan's calling, and they're going through the code words, and they're talking baseball.
But like we talked about earlier, right? So Clevin goes down. And it wouldn't surprise me in a show like this of war if we do lose a major actor, but for it to happen off screen just doesn't seem right. I would assume we're still going to see more of this guy.
Yeah, what I would assume is they are going to dedicate the next episode to what happened to Clevins and Crosby, because Crosby's our narrator. He doesn't come back during this one either. And they do show us the debrief where all these guys are talking through shoots and no shoots, and this is where we find out that Harry Nash went down, and so Rosenthal has to tell Helen. But yeah, I think once again, I think there are some challenges to this show, we'll say logistically based on the book and the stories, that it's difficult to keep cutting back and forth. And so I think we're going to get this mission from Clevins and Crosby's perspective, I would hope, in the next episode.
Yeah, start the next episode saying 48 hours earlier or something like that.
Sure. 48 years earlier. And we're going to see Clevins and Crosby's parents making Clevins and Crosby. Anyways, they're not 48. That doesn't make any sense. Once again, show cuts way too quickly at the end. It's quite silly. I don't understand who is in charge of ending a show and kicking in what comes on next. Apple,
I don't watch those.
Deal together.
Do you? I know I'm gonna watch this show.
I don't watch the next time. But it's just so
okay.
abrupt. It's you don't even have time to a show. I'm trying to think how Band of Brothers would have rolled in. They always had a pretty good transition and then music and credits, and you could kind of decompress. And I'm maybe being too dramatic here, but this show is it ends so quickly and cuts to the next on that you're wait, what? I don't and it doesn't make any sense because it's a streamer. It's not we're trying to make it to the 9 o'clock news. So you got to hit your commercials. It's quite silly. Just silly.
I feel like the podcast Radio Lab, which I think you brought me onto a while ago, they did something like the complete opposite, where they would end a podcast and it usually would end it on like a question or a very poignant point, and then they play like an extended set of music. So like as you're sitting there like listening to the music, you're trying to digest and think about what happened.
Right.
I think this show would benefit from that.
No, I agree. There should be questions that show up. They're like, how did this show make you feel? Mm-hmm. Would you like to listen to a podcast if two idiots talk about it? Who do you think wins in the end? Go to FanDuel. Place your bets on who wins World War II. Same game parlay. Anyways, we're sponsored by DraftKings. All right, I'm still enjoying it. I'm excited to watch all 9 episodes. I appreciate you digesting this with me, Tom. Obviously, like, incredible stories. I think they're important. It's going to be a show I'm going to watch all the way through, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of time, and I'm going to watch through it again, and like I'm going to keep watching through it until I love it, and I can glean what I want from it. And like, I think after a couple, like, the issue with Band of Brothers and Pacific is like, I don't know that I knew all of the characters the first time I watched it. Was it as confusing as maybe I find this one? These guys have to do aerial combat. Everyone has to wear an oxygen mask, and like it's huge. It's a much larger group of people, so they've just got some challenges. And so I'm forgiving all of that, and I'm just trying to like appreciate the show for what it is. And it is pretty fascinating to see them like bring these stories to life, even if some of the CGI is weird. But
yeah, no, we talked about at the beginning, like so many of these stories in this like war, I think it's specific, it's like lost on other generations to be able to like have this, to see what they went through and what they did to fight for our country. It's incredible. So I'm with you. Like, I'll forgive some of the misgivings and like maybe plot devices or some of the, then the mechanic going into the wheel, like whatever, it's fine. It's still stories that need to be told, and I'm very, very much still enjoying it.
Sure. And having read the book, I'm sure there's probably a story where they're like, and the mechanic was in the wheel well until they took off. Like, yeah. I'm sure I'm probably off on that. It's just the way the show, like sometimes the show is taking something that is like peak drama, like absolutely these guys flying for their lives. There's no like worse enemy than the Nazis. Like these guys had an incredible mission. But then the show as a TV show is like, hey, how do we wrench up the drama? Let's let him not put down the landing gear until like the very last moment. Let's keep
have
the
him drop
guy.
a bolt and then catch it right before it falls.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, hey, we don't need that. Like, we understand the stakes. So once again, and sometimes like the truth and what actually happened is more fantastic than the fiction they're making up. So I would like to be forgiven if all of this stuff actually happened and it's just the show doing it. But I do feel like some of it is a little bit cheap drama based on like the backdrop of a very real drama that's going on. So,
agreed.
But still enjoying it. You all can join us. We'll do probably 5 and 6. We'll probably do this in 2-episode chunks, depending on our schedule, or we'll just knock out the rest of it in one. We haven't decided yet. We appreciate you all for hanging out with us. You can reach out to us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. If you're a World War II buff and we got a bunch of stuff wrong, you can email us, but we probably won't apologize. Tom, what did I miss?
Yeah, follow us on the socials, Twitter and Instagram at Team Binge or Team Binge Podcast. Let us know what you think of the show and some of our kind of commentary thus far. And if you are enjoying our show, we're also covering The Night Country, the new True Detective season. So please give that a listen as well.
Yep. And for Team Binge, I have been Julian.
And I am still Tom. We'll see you next time, everybody.